I'm Al Regnery. I'm the president and publisher of Republic Book Publishers, and we are the proud publishers of a book under the title of In the Name of My Father by Ahmad Massoud. Ahmad is the leader of the National Resistance Front in Afghanistan. His father had more or less the same job and was instrumental in fighting the Soviet Union when they were trying to take over Afghanistan, and again, was in the forefront of resisting the Taliban before we got involved in 2001. His father was assassinated 2 days before 9/11 by the Taliban, I assume, and was probably the most famous person in Afghanistan and was a wonderful world leader who was a friend of liberty, a friend of the West, a friend of the United States. And obviously, there are many things that have transpired since then in Afghanistan. Ahmad has been in the forefront of them. He's probably as knowledgeable about anybody in the world as to what's going on there now. So we are very pleased to have an interview with him today. Ahmad, let me just start off. The title of your book, as I mentioned, is In the Name of My Father. And your father, as I just said, was certainly was in the forefront of fighting the Taliban. I wondered if you could just tell us a little bit about him and what he stood for, and what some of the repercussions have been of what he did, and why he's instrumental in your book.
Sure. Thank you very much for having me once again. Thank you so much for publishing the book. Regarding the questions, first and foremost, because I believe Ahmad Shah Massoud is to some extent well known, but not to the extent that we actually believe that he was very instrumental, not just only in the Afghan politics and the recent politics in the region, but also on a global scale. As many scholars, they call him the person who actually won the Cold War. He was the person who withstood the immense attack of the Soviets, much harsher than what actually they are showing right now in Ukraine. And he managed to do it probably all alone. And as you said, he was an ally of the West, and also he managed to do a tremendous job in fighting that. On other hand, after the defeat of the Soviet, unfortunately, the West and America completely left Afghanistan, and it was upon his shoulder to withstand another invasion, which was the global terrorism. Way before the war on terror, which was launched by the United States and its allies, Ahmad Shah Massoud was fighting against this enemy all alone. Something which, unfortunately, for 20 years, it took more than a dozen of countries in joint operation to fight against. Ahmad Shah Massoud was doing it single-handedly. So he was both a political genius and also a military genius, which I believe he's not. He is to the level of the likes of Mandela and those prominent leaders, which unfortunately he has not been very much well known in that category in the West. Although that the Time magazine once called him and as top 100 leaders of the 21st century. So this is something that I believe is very important in my book, because what I do is the continuation of that path. Because he was fighting against the same Taliban, the same mentality, the same ideology, and we are continuing the same path. At the same time, he was fighting for the values which we all cherish and we talk about. So therefore, I believe that I owe him, someone who paved the way with his blood and his life. I believe I owe him, and our generation owe the likes of him who fought to show us this path, and at least this much to name the books and to name the path that we walk in their name.
Well, that's certainly a very noble goal that you have, and I know that that's a huge task. Afghanistan, needless to say, plays a big part in recent American history. There were about 750,000 Americans who were deployed there at one time or another over 20 years. I think there were about 5,000 that were killed and another 15,000 or so casualties. So in the minds of those people, obviously Afghanistan is is a huge place, but it comes up in the news every day. So I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about, particularly talking to those people that served over there, how your book explains what the repercussions of their time were, and what their involvement meant to you and to the memory of your father.
Sure. I'm in touch with a lot of veterans, both the Afghan veterans and also American veterans, who for the past 20 years, they fought alongside each other against the terrorism, which right now we are fighting against. This is very interesting that the assessment and the comments and what they say are very much actually similar. What the American veterans are saying and the Afghan veterans. Both of them, they call the situation in Afghanistan a political defeat, not a military defeat. One thing that both the Afghans and the Americans, they say they believe that unfortunately both the Afghan politicians and American politicians, they betrayed the noble cause that they gave their life for. So the Afghans, they feel that their politicians, they betrayed them. They didn't do a good job in containing the country and staying and fighting for the country. And they did not certainly do a good job in ruling the country politically, which caused for the collapse of the country. Because till the very last minute, Afghan soldiers, they actually gave their lives and they fought in the front line. Until the very last month, the Taliban could not actually capture even one single district. Out of 300 districts in Afghanistan, they did not manage to capture one district. So militarily, the personnel, they were doing just fine. Unfortunately, Afghanistan collapse was politically. And this is exactly what Americans, they feel. They strongly believe, the American veterans, that they have done a tremendous job. Within less than 3 weeks, they managed to completely vanquish Taliban from the north of Afghanistan all the way to the border to the Pakistan in just 3 weeks. They managed to capture Kabul. They managed to completely destroy the infrastructure of the Taliban and their networks and everything. So it was a huge and tremendous job. So they believe that alongside the other Afghans, with all these bloods that they gave, their story in Afghanistan was a success. However, unfortunately, two events happened which caused it to become a very, to have a better ending. First, it was an unconditional negotiation, completely overlooking the position of the Afghanistan government, and completely overlooking the past 20 years of efforts in Afghanistan by international forces in Afghanistan. And second, the unconditional withdrawal. So these two, combining these two political events and political decisions, for whatever reasons that it may be, it truly was seen in the eye of American veterans and Afghan veterans as a betrayal to the cause that they fought for and they gave their life for.
Thank you. Certainly, the consequences of that are, to some extent, known in America, probably not nearly as well as you can tell us. Peter Bergen, in his very fine foreword to your book, mentions the betrayal that existed in Afghanistan, and he talks about that scandalous withdrawal when we left all those weapons there and we left Afghanistan in the lurch after all that we'd done, with the belief that if we had left 2,500 troops there, that probably they would have, the Taliban wouldn't have conquered all those 300 districts. Talk about that a little bit and let us know something about the consequences of that horrible withdrawal that we did.
Sure. Two events that I mentioned to you, the negotiation, also the withdrawal. What it did, basically, it completely demoralized the soldiers on the ground. And it demoralized the political leadership, that they thought that Afghanistan has been betrayed and been handed over by America to the Taliban. So that was the perception of the people and the soldiers and the politicians in Kabul and Afghanistan, that we have been betrayed just the way that Vietnam has been betrayed. So this is basically Vietnam 2.0. And now we are being called corrupt, we are being called this and that. It's all an excuse for a grand gesture, which was to withdraw, to leave Afghanistan altogether. I remember because I was heavily involved in the last few years before the collapse of Afghanistan with both the military and also the political leadership. And I was trying to do anything possible to prevent such catastrophe. These two, it truly, first and foremost, demoralized the soldiers. Secondly, it took from the government and also from the military leadership, it took the courage, and also what it took from them, it was the authority. They no longer had the authority, the sort of on the people, because they felt that the world is basically leaving them and they're all alone. Unfortunately, with the weak leadership that we had, like Mr. Ghani and the others, everything collapsed like a house of cards. Very quickly and very fast. And then it came to the point of the withdrawal. The withdrawal was unconditional. And all the negotiation, it was with the Taliban. So we are leaving, you don't do anything to us. And then this Afghan government, we don't care what is going to happen. There was no basically plan B. What if the Taliban do not accept a sort of a unified government, or sort of an inclusive government? Since there was no policy whatsoever for afterward the withdrawal, and also the withdrawal was unconditional, any plan for peace, it was dead from the beginning, because the Taliban knew they had to just play with time. Well, but with time, with this unconditional sort of withdrawal, and they knew one thing, that the regional country, they very much actually want the Americans to leave Afghanistan. I'm sure you saw that 2 days ago, the Chinese ambassador with a huge caravan of cars, he went and he checked the Bagram Air Base. So you see, these regional powers, they were very much liking this vacuum that was being created, and they were very much actually liking the Taliban to come, because they have been empowering them all along to be a strategic tool against the presence of America, which was a strategic threat to them. So therefore, all of these things was basically like working together and to creating the collapse that happened. Unfortunately, right now what is happening with the current policy which exists for Afghanistan, the people feel, as you said that Mr. Bergen is also saying, they feel betrayed, they feel alone, and that is why many other countries, I believe even maybe the feeling in Ukraine can be like this, getting the understanding situation in Afghanistan, that this is the policy, the America comes to some extent and then leave you behind, and they just leave you in the face of the monster. So that is how, unfortunately, the people of Afghanistan are feeling. And the collapse, once again, it was completely the political decision. You say 2,500, I will tell you, even 1,000 US forces would be efficient just to stay either in Bagram or in Kabul for Afghanistan not to collapse. It was not about their presence in terms of military support. It was just a moral boost, and it was just a sort of an international support. But
That's
that was
so
something.
even 1,000 people,
Even 1,000
have been in a completely different situation.
Yeah, it was just a symbolic gesture that
Understand.
America would be like, okay, I'm standing with the people of Afghanistan, with the democratic government, with all the issue, and I'm also telling Taliban to come and join this government, and we are going to pave way for a inclusive government, including the Taliban. And I have these 1,000 soldiers in Kabul and the embassy as a symbolic gesture to enforce this policy. But what was the problem? There was no policy. So they left everyone because they had no policy for Afghanistan afterward.
Okay. Well, so tell us a little bit about day-to-day life in Afghanistan now, how that's changed. We read about it to some extent, but I'm sure you have a better firsthand idea of what's going on, what the Taliban is up to, and what the consequences are for the Afghan people.
Sure. Right now, Afghanistan, the best example I can give you, It's a big prison for the people of Afghanistan, and it's a safe haven for terrorists. This is the best example that I can give you. The Taliban basically recently they announced their morality minister that even showing living things on media, it is forbidden.
Wow.
So it is, we are not 1,400 years back in history. We are 2,500 or 3,000 years back in the history. So it is unbelievable what they are actually forcing people to do so. Of course, at the same time, they are trying to show to the world a bit of softer voice and softer image. Why? Because they need the world for their recognition and support. However, toward the people of Afghanistan, they're very much harsh and cruel. On day to day, the women, they have completely are vanished from the society. Of course, they can go to some bazaar or they can buy something that is like, the immediate need. However, they can't go to school, they can't go to work, they can't have their voices being heard, and 50% is completely wiped from the society. And second, it's systematically, it is systematic way of governing to remove the 50% of the society from women from the society. And then another thing is that they only accept themselves. There is no political inclusion from any other group. It's just one group ruling a country, 100,000 people ruling almost 40 million people. Another aspect of day-to-day life is that the economy is just a bubble. If the international aid stops, Afghan people will starve to death. And even this support, it didn't stop people from traveling and immigrating. In the past 3 years, the level of immigration spiked in Afghanistan. Just in the past 6 to 8 months, 700,000 immigrants, Afghans, they left their country, according to UN data, something like that. If the Taliban are saying that Afghanistan is becoming safe, it is all good and everything is like flowery, why all these people are running away from the country? In the recent very tragic event, my friend, about 2 days ago, a group of Afghans, they left Afghanistan for finding a better life in Iran. 300 people were massacred by Iranian border guards. 300 people. They were massacred when they were trying illegally to enter Iran. Of course, their action is not justifiable, the Afghans to go illegally. But the thing is, they had no choice. And this is the life of Afghan people. It's still they are going. In the face of all those hardships, in the face of bullets, in the face of being drowned, in the face of the cold and harsh environment of Athens and Greece or like Poland, still they try to go to get to Europe or to get to somewhere else for a better life. Why? Because their own country is becoming a harsh prison, an open prison. Their girls cannot go to school, their kids cannot study, and they have no right whatsoever.
Well, back before, worse than it was before your father was killed, I guess, isn't it?
Way, way worse. Even this is another interesting thing. The Taliban 2.0, this Taliban, is way worse than the Taliban of the first time. The Taliban of the first time, they were to some extent, I can say, Afghanized. They were still like having some roots with Afghan people, with Afghan culture, and also with that the sort of moderate version of Islam. This one, for the past 20 years, they have been, together with the Al Qaeda and other terrorist groups, and they grew up with extreme mentality. This Taliban 2.0 is worse than the Taliban of the 90s.
Let me ask you a little bit about Iran. You mentioned that the people were going there. Iran is viewed as the leader of terrorism in the world now. What is their engagement? What is their involvement with present day Afghanistan?
Well, the Iranian, they have their own issue. The Iranian one thing is that they are having 8 million Afghans in their country. With all the sanctions and everything, which is putting a lot of toll on their economy. On top of that, having 8 million Afghans, that's like 10% of their own population. from another nation, alongside the threats that it poses, security threats that it poses, that the people from Al Qaeda to Daesh to other groups, they can enter Iran as part of these immigrants. It is on the other hand. So actually, the people of Iran, they have been very kind and they have been very supportive of immigrants to some extent. But then slowly, when it got increased to the level, even them, they could not have it anymore. So unfortunately, one thing is that from Iran to other countries, they are trying to solve these issues on a tactical base with engagement with Taliban. It cannot solve like that. If they want to solve the issue of immigration, it can only be solved in the face of Afghans having a legitimate government. They are running away because there is no accountable and legitimate government, and just a terrorist groups are in charge. So Iranian, instead, in all the other countries as well, including, unfortunately, the United States, instead of helping Afghans to achieve a legitimate government, they are engaging with the Taliban for short-term tactical solution. So basically, the behavior of Iran toward Afghanistan is short-term tactical.
And that's certainly been made worse. Obviously, I don't even need to ask the question by our with Afghanistan. I guess that's an obvious question. Ahmad, let me ask you a little bit about Islam. You talk about your moderate, your Muslim form of Muslimism and Islam and the fundamentalists, the fanaticists, and so on, which is an important part of your book. Talk about that for a few minutes and tell us why that's important for Americans to understand.
Of course. There's one thing is, when it comes to religion itself is a very complicated matter. It's something that everyone can have different interpretation, either if it's from Christianity or if it's Islam or any other religion. When it comes to Islam, from the very early ages of Islam, this is something that I hope for Americans and the world to understand. From the very early age of Islam, in the time of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, there were a group who became Muslim, but then they criticized Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, the messenger, for not being strict enough or Muslim enough, which Prophet Muhammad called them Khawarij, which means the people who are outside the religion. They are not Muslim. They are too extreme. So right now, unfortunately, my religion and my ideology, it has been kept hostage by these extreme Khawarij and extremist group. Because in the religion of Islam that I believe in, my Prophet believes, living in harmony with Jewish people, Christian people, atheists, and any other groups, it is completely acceptable. To the extent, there are two scholars that I can mention today. One is Al-Qadri. He's a Pakistani scholar. He wrote a book called Fatwa on Terrorism. In that book, he mentions that if you're living in a secular country like United Kingdom or United States, that it allows you to practice your religion freely. It allows you to have an income. It allows you to get educated. And also it nurtures you with all these things that society provides you. You have religious responsibility and duty. In the situation that country is under attack by another country, it is your religious duty to defend that country. If you get killed in that line of duty, you're a shaheed. See, for example, in America, if, for example, me, if I was an American and the America is providing me with all the opportunity, and I can be free as a Muslim to practice my religion, and I can study whatever I want, and my kids can study, and they can live freely and happily. In such society where justice is being served, which I am free, if another nation is attacking America, by my religious values and religious principle, I am forced. It is my religious duty to defend America.
Very good. of course, explained in your book. I just want to come back on a couple of questions
Yeah,
about the book and
sure.
how that will illuminate many of these things for Americans.
Yeah.
Obviously, your book is unique, and Afghanistan remains to be a major question here. And so, how can, as people read your book, how can they better understand what you have done, what your father did, and what the situation in Afghanistan is today?
Well, the thing is, one of the things that I was trying to write in my book is that when it comes to Muslim, always we have been criticized with a lot of things that, and I always call myself like one of the things that my father stood up against this terrorism, and also I am doing the same thing. The world is always calling us a silent majority. We always say that we are not these extremes; they are a minority. If we are not, then we have to do something about it. If we should not be the silent majority. So that's something that I do, something that my father did. It is that this silent majority should not be silent anymore, should actually stand against these extremists and terrorists to show to the world that there is another interpretation of my religion, the true interpretation, which can be living in harmony and peace with each other and also with the world. So what I'm trying to do is basically trying to manifest this, and also at the same time to be walking in this path, and at the same time to sacrifice my time, my life, my opportunities, everything that I have for a country that I love more than anything in this world, even more than my children, my family. I love my country more than them. To give them an opportunity to finally for us to have a dignified life. I want to have the dignity that an American has, that a British has, that a Korean have, or Japanese or someone else. We Afghans, we deserve to have such life. We need to have such life. And this is something that I'm trying so hard to do, because so far, always Afghans are being heard as terrorists, as extremists, as fighters. Always Afghanistan is the center of terror, opium trade, the center of this and that. Our effort is for that justice, that freedom, that dignified life. And this is what I'm trying to do in terms of my country. On a bigger scale and religious scale, I do not want to be a silent majority. Yes, we are the majority, but we need to stand against the terrorism. We should not come and always complain and blame America or the West or East or North or South when it comes to these terrorists, these that, oh, they are a part of geopolitical tools. Yes, they are. But what is our responsibility? I just want to do my duty and responsibility as a good person.
Well, you're certainly doing that, and I hope that your book has some impact in the United States so the American people understand that as well. All those 750,000 veterans, I'm sure, do, the ones that serve there. Many Americans don't, but it's still a huge issue. So the extent that your book helps to clarify that, I think that
Hope so.
it's a good thing. And we are proud to be your publishers. So I just wish you
Thank you
well
very much.
in all that you do. And anything else we can do for you, you let us know.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Please allow me to express myself and my family and our people's extreme gratitude for everything that you do. Even if it's a small voice, it is the right voice. It is the right cause, because the Taliban actually even recently they once again approached me with a position in their government. I could easily accept that and to save maybe just my value or my family or to have a good life myself, but it's not the right cause. If we do not stand for something, we stand for nothing. So I'm trying to stand for something which I believe strongly we all share.
Well, you certainly told us that you do, and I commend you for that. So
thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. You guys have a great day. It was a pleasure. Thank you. Goodbye, sir.